Here we have the Socion, but for now we're going to focus on subtyping the NeFi as to whether they are NE subtype or FI subtype. So one method of subtyping involves whether a person is more socially extroverted or socially introverted. If they're more socially extroverted, then it might be interpreted as being NE with an FE emphasis, or if it's socially introverted, then it'd be NE with an FI emphasis. And so somebody might subtype someone as a NE subtype if they're socially extroverted, or an FI subtype if they're socially introverted. But I'm kind of wondering if maybe this might have something to do with the instinct stacking. Whether the SO could mean that could help show how they're more socially extroverted or socially oriented, and the SX might be more they're relationally oriented. I don't know. I'm not sure how Enneagram works anyways, but I kind of wonder if the instinct stackings might have something to do with it. Another way of subtyping is to figure out whether or not the person gets along better with alpha types, in which case they would be NE subtype, or with gamma types, in which case they would be called FI subtypes. Another subtyping method is to go along the irrational versus rational scale, where on the NESI side, the person tends to seek out more information before they move on to assessing part, whereas you have other people who more easily move on to the assessing part based on the information that they have and drawing conclusions based on that current information. Again, the FITE would be based on the FITE subtypes would be the types that that quickly can assess things and draw conclusions based on what they have, whereas the NESI ones want more information before they feel comfortable drawing conclusions based on that information. There's also the difference between assessing the information or stimulus according to their relational and or emotional and psychological impacts versus assessing the information according to the actions that a person that you can actually see, not the implications of the actions, but the things that are actually happening in the environment, or assessing it based on common knowledge, what they call facts and stuff like that, and or common experiences. Another subtyping system is regarding the state of rest versus state of mobilization, how quickly an ENFP can move from this state into this state. Here for ENFPs we have, and even for ESFPs, we have the decision-making point, and it's the stimulus point. It's either decision-making or the stimulus that occurs, such as if a value is triggered or emotion is triggered. That sends the ENFP from the state of rest to the state of mobilization. It's this point which is whatever happens with this information, it's this information that caused them to move into the role system. So the NE subtype would be someone who spends a lot of time in their state of rest and has a little more difficult time moving into a state of motion, while an FI subtype would, because they're able to assess information a lot easier than the NE subtype, the FI subtype is more capable of getting into motion. But of course, an ENFP only has the mobilization role. It's not in their ego. It's not something that they consistently or regularly do. It's not specifically a part of them. This is part of their ego. So they can only spend so much time here, spending energy here, before they have to move back to the state of rest. SCFIs, ESFPs, are slightly different, but I'm not going to get into the actual types right now. I'm referring to ENFP NE subtype versus ENFP FI subtype in regards to using the subtyping system that it utilizes the rest versus mobilization. There is, however, one thing to keep in mind when referring to the mobilization part, is if the mobilization is used for gathering information, In other words, if it's being used for the specific purpose of improving the available information or gathering more information so that the any can be used, then it would be an any, this would fit with what an any subtype would do. Sometimes you have to actually manipulate objects or move things around, or to do a trial and error type thing where you do something real quick and you're not really looking for results so much as you are looking for feedback from what you did. And so if you do, you take the action, you get the feedback, and that becomes more information which can be used for the NE, as opposed to being mobilized for the specific purpose of getting something done, such as chores. I had a list here. Workaholics Anonymous, was referring to the grader. I'm just using some of the examples that she gave. Okay, I'm not saying this is solely specific to her or anything like that. But how to use the grader? Well, she got the information that she was needed, which was the TE information that she needed, which put her into action in grating the cheese or whatever it was that she was grating. Another thing is okay, so she wants to, she does her workouts, and she's pretty consistent, I guess, or something like that. She does her workouts, and they're pretty important to her. Well, it's the importance of the workouts to her. She's not trying to gain information from it. She's trying to do something with it, but it's the value of the workouts that puts her into the motion of going to the gym and doing her workouts and stuff like that. She gets it done, and then she can come back to her state of rest. For me right now, say my garden, I'm trying to do these plants and stuff like that. Well, I'm doing a combination. Is one, Okay, so sorry about the phone. Regarding the garden, okay, so my goal, one of my values is to turn my yard into a garden, and so that's helping me to push me into into motion to get this garden going. But I don't want to spend too much time focusing specifically on the plants and their needs and their traits and all that other stuff. That's just too much freaking work for me. I'd rather be over here and just do maybe a trial and error. So I, do a little bit of work, come back to my state of rest, go back and do a little bit more work, come back to my state of rest. I'll plant something, put a plant somewhere, come back to a state of rest, then go back and look at the plant, and if I like where it's at, the FI, if I like where it's at, then I'll keep it there. If I don't like where it's at, then that's enough trigger to push me into moving the plant and putting it somewhere else, and then I come back to my state of rest and then check again to see if I like where it's at now or not. So on that sense, I'm using my how I feel about where it's at, my aesthetics, I guess you could say. Another way of using it would be, and this will be happening later, I can't do it right now, I'll have to wait and see how things work. If the plant starts dying, if it's wilting, if it's not getting enough sun where it's at, or it's getting too much sun or something like that, I can notice what's happening to it by what's happening to the leaves on it, which gives me objective information that I can then use to put myself in action to either to move it to where it's going to get more sun, where it's going to get less sun, or water it, or whatever, give it some kind of minerals or whatever it is that it needs, some fertilizer or whatever. So what's happening to its leaves, the process that it's going through, will put me into motion to resolve it, and then I can come back to my state of rest and just hang out here for a while. And finally we come to, does the person tend to spend more time doing gathering information regarding theory or principles or things like that, or do they spend more time gathering information from actual physical objects or using objects or stuff like that? It's kind of related to the other one, but